Hello and welcome to our Conversations for a Better World on the topic, Turn the Crisis into an Opportunity. And today we're wondering whether an unconditional basic income would be a good idea to close or to at least reduce the gap between rich and poor in Europe in these times. Donald Trump is giving away $1,000 to each American citizen, and in Hong Kong, the people already received at the end of February an equivalent of 1,200 euros. And in Germany, the fashion designer Tonja Merz writes under her online petition for an unconditional basic income, there is no better way to test this concept than in these times, and the greatest opportunity lies in the crisis. And we wonder, is that true? And we are really, really happy to have with us Marta Tycner. She is an activist and a campaigner at WeMove.EU, and she's responsible for a campaign that is calling for an unconditional basic income for the next 6 months throughout Europe. So welcome, Marta. Thank you very much for being with us. So first of all, you live in Poland. So my first question is, how have you experienced the crisis so far, and what are your feelings about it?
I think many feelings are the same all over the globe, right? We are afraid of about our health. We don't know what's going to happen. We're closed at home and so on. What might be slightly different, especially from what's happening in the countries like Germany, you mentioned, is that the economic response here is very modest, and it's directed. It doesn't show that this shift of paradigm, which is possible in many different places, has happened here. So basically, there is a rescue package proposed by the government, but it's mostly directed to banks and financial institutions. There's some help going to businesses, and literally, like virtually nothing going to workers. So we are very much afraid that it's going to be the crisis that is hitting is going to be very deep and very painful for people. And of course, there's like all sort of political turmoil around it, but it's a different question.
You just mentioned that the help is very different in each European country that people receive. And here in Germany, we have something that is called short-time work compensation. So companies who are not able to pay the employees anymore can receive money from the government. And like this, we try to ensure or make sure that the jobs are still there after the crisis. And I just heard this morning in the radio that all European leaders decided to have this as a tool in Europe-wide. So I don't know how and how quick this would may come true in reality in the next time. But just in general, my question: why is an unconditional basic income a better idea than this short-time work compensation?
Okay, first of all, it's already a breakthrough. So we know that the EU, the European Commission, has been working on something like this, but it was just some very vague promises. We didn't know what it was and when it was when it was supposed to be introduced. And now they sped it up and want to have it immediately. And it's probably the very first social intervention that we have from the EU. Like apart from the maybe agricultural policies, we can treat them as such, but social policy was just not existing right on the EU level. And now we have within weeks a decision that it's possible and it's going to happen. So I wouldn't say it's nothing. We'll see the details, what it is. However, we must remember that this crisis is hitting not only employed people, but really everybody. So there is the first ones who were hit by this crisis were most probably freelancers in some areas, and entire companies in like entire sectors of the economy, like tourism or restaurants, right? So for some sectors, help which is directed to uphold employment is just not effective, because there is nothing to be done, and it can be like the employment will not be there. These people will be unemployed. Then there is the current unemployment, people who are already unemployed and didn't have any income. And in many places, you must remember that in many places, like in Poland, for example, the unemployment insurance or benefits insurance, the benefits were like below the level of basic existence, and only for 3 months, and only for like 10, 15, I think, % of unemployed. So basically, if you're unemployed, you have no income. This is the rule here. And you try to find some occupation somehow, right? So so this is this whole big group of people who don't know what to do with themselves. And unemployment will grow. There is no way of keeping these jobs, all the jobs, right? So we must direct some help to everybody. And another characteristic of this crisis is that it really hits so many groups, and we don't even realize that these groups are hit. We just learn, and we have to think, right? Yeah, somebody who organized concerts as a, I don't know, scenographer doesn't have a job now. Like, yeah, that's true. That's actually true. But if you want to list all these people, you just don't know how to do it, because there's so many of them. So this is indeed the exactly the moment when we must have some help for everybody, some basic support for everybody to show that we care for everyone, and also to give people some security in these times.
Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, an unconditional basic income would make sure that really everyone gets help, and not only employees or certain groups of people. And on the other hand, it would be a bureaucratic effort to really check and make sure who deserves help or not, or something like that. So
yes, sorry, just brief mention. For example, in Italy, we know that there is a scheme which was announced as something like the basic income, and then it turned out it's really hard to get, because you have to fulfill certain conditions, and it's really complicated to even fit these conditions. So that's a problem very often.
And it takes time to want to say yes, you get the help. Yeah. So in your idea of this unconditional basic income, how would it look like? Who exactly gets it, and how much would it be for everyone?
So we're working together with the network called Unconditional Basic Income Europe. Mm-hmm. These are people who have been thinking about this solution for very long, like 6 years at least. They keep campaigning for this. There was even an initiative before which reached the European Parliament and was rejected in 2017, I think. And obviously the ideas can range. There is a range of solutions we can think of in such a situation. The one this network was most keen to propose for this particular situation was something as a mechanism actually similar to this unemployment reinsurance, which means that the EU is a warrant for national schemes. So the basic income is paid in each country, by each country, but it's financially backed by European Union. And this is, again, there are obviously problems which we can think of in such a scheme. And also, like, between the proposal and the implementation, there is still like a space to like do the thinking, but we thought that this, if we want to do something really quickly, it's the only way, because it's only the national governments that have the possibility to do something like this. For example, they have access to they have they can just make transfers quickly because they do it already, right? They have the entire machine, the entire bureaucracy to make transfers. They have some lists of people. So all the technical part is on the national side, whereas what the EU can do is the financial backing of it. So this is also the question of how high it's supposed to be, because obviously, and this is something we don't talk about that much in the EU, we have enormous discrepancies, enormous differences between income levels in different countries, like between Bulgaria and Luxembourg, which is the two poles of this. It's like 30 times more. So obviously, for the moment, it would need to be probably different in different countries, like different levels in different countries. Even though I feel like it's in a way, it would be in a way much more just to have it the same amount everywhere. But normally, when you calculate basic income, you just take the costs of the living in a given space, right, in a given region, and you say, yeah, this is it. You need to pay your rent, you need to pay your bills, you need to have something to eat. This is the income you get. And this is very similar to how for example, minimum wages or some minimal schemes of support in different social security areas are calculated. So this is something that could be done pretty quickly everywhere. I don't think it can do it immediately. What I think it can do, it can be an incentive to think about it in the nearest future, because if we introduce a scheme like this, we need to find money for this, right? And even though there are ways of financing it from deficits, from different quantitative easing and so on schemes, but if we want to uphold it, and this is another big question, like we need such a thing to have something to fight for, to organize around as as people of Europe, let's say. But at some point, if you want to uphold such a big scheme, you must start thinking about getting this money from taxes. And this is the moment when you just start really reducing inequalities. So I think it's not a very direct way, even though obviously, like lifting people from poverty, which is also, I mean, this is the discussion between like an emergency measure and a measure for forever, right? An emergency measure is there to help people survive, and if it's paid for just a couple of months, it will not lift anybody from poverty. But if it's for longer, then yes, on the one hand, it can help people get out of poverty, because we know that basic income has this has this characteristics or this is how it works, that people first of all are supported by this cash, but also have the freedom and more space to like find a job, do something with their lives. This is like a very, very, very widespread problem. You're just stuck somewhere in your life and you can't do anything without it because you don't have money and you have to fight for survival, and so on. And also it gives like huge space for creativity. You can always just stop your activity, your professional activity, for a while to do something else. So all this thing is there. All these things are there. And on the other hand, it's if we want to pay for it, we need to have higher taxes for the rich, and there we go, right? And there is also the question of inequalities across Europe, because for the moment, we have no means across Europe to even the inequalities between different areas and countries. And one of the ideas, for example, like in the progressive space, so to say, was to have a European minimum wage scheme. It's a different discussion for a different time, obviously, but to have this scheme, to have some minimal standards, and then lift this minimum wage in countries where wages are lower, to get to some convergence also in terms of how much people earn and what's the standard of living. So as soon as we have anything that is like that goes across Europe as one universal European social scheme, we also have the mechanism to lift regions to high levels of living standards. Even though probably the minimum wage is better here, but even the minimum basic income could be such a scheme.
Yeah, we call ourselves For a Better World because we deeply believe that drawing the image or telling stories about a better world really can release a lot of creativity and confidence and energy and all that. So let's say your idea of an unconditional basic income European-wide would come true. And after a while, like 5 years or so, how would our everyday life look like? How would we feel about life and also about Europe? Because not few people wonder if Europe is really keeping its promises.
Yes, these are two questions, and they're both very important to me too. So first of all, if universal basic income is there for good, not the emergency one, if it's there for good, we get this sense of security that we were all deprived of for the past years, at least, well, in countries, from my perspective, like Western countries, since the 2008, in places like Poland and the former Soviet bloc, so to say. It's since the 90s, really, it never stopped. This feeling that we're deeply insecure in our position, we can be deprived of basic support and income. So this can be gone. And this is something that really changes societies a lot, and I believe in many different ways. It helps unload a lot of social tensions and a lot of this grief we have everywhere. Like, people are looking for a way to express it, and they turn to like dangerous movements or political groupings and so on. Obviously, it's not a remedy for everything, but I do believe it can reduce this a lot. As you say, and as I said also already, I also have this. I'm convinced that it could unleash so much of like energy of people and creativity, and lift and give so many people opportunity to do things they couldn't do. It's not only like founding your startup now, right? It's also about getting an education, for example. There are groups where you can't get an education because you have to go to work, or some space to, like, people who are caring for their relatives, for example, at homes, right? They can use this money to like share this burden somehow with someone. There's so many opportunities. There are also dangers. That's true. That's we can talk about it. It's not that it's like the holy grail of social policy and also European policy. And the European question. Well, I've been campaigning and working on like European Union as a project for people and of people for quite some time now. And I really think that what we miss is this direct connection between our private lives and the EU. And I don't have like data to support it, but I think that we can observe it, for example, with farmers, right? When farmers get direct payments from the EU, they have sometimes very difficult relationship with the EU, but they have a relationship with the EU, right? They know what it means that the EU acts or not. They get more or less from direct payments. It's very, very simple. And if we all have it, it's gonna change the way we think about the EU immediately, and it's gonna change also the dynamics of European-wide, social movements and fights, because it's really hard right now to organize something European-wide, because people don't think in this scope. Also, they don't feel that they have an influence on the EU. They see it as some very distant bunch of bureaucrats just deciding for them, and they don't even realize sometimes that they actually have influence and impact on this. Not as much as we would wish they could, but they can have it. But they don't know it, and they don't use this opportunity. So for me, it would be this opportunity to like for everybody to feel what it is, the political concept of the European Union. So every time, there's going to be a moment of a discussion. Once this basic income is there, every time there is a discussion about it, people's going to be part of it. They're going to be part of it because they're like, oh, why am I supposed to get like 50 euros more? Or are they going to cut it? Oh no, we need to mobilize. So it's just, for me, it's like a gateway for a European European society. Well, it's a big word, but yeah, something like that.
Influencing Europe is my keyword. Because my question was also, if I'm convinced, yes, this is really a good idea, I want an unconditional basic income too, how can I support you, or what can I do to make this come true?
For now, we launched as a starting point. We launched a petition you can sign, and at WeMove.EU at the website. It's in many languages. We keep translating it, and then we are preparing actions to get to the politicians with this idea. We know that nowadays it's not so easy because, for example, for very simple reasons, like it's an emergency time, so the meetings are not planned. They're planned with a very short advance, so we don't always know when and where. Well, where online when the politicians are meeting, but we know enough to try to influence them with the means we have, which is mostly online in different ways. And for now, we're planning. Okay. Yeah, we're planning something for soon, let's say. So it's close too much. But I think this, as this emergency is going to last longer, it feels, on the one hand, it feels like a little bit, some things are being discussed already, and we know where the European plan is going to go, in which direction. But at the same time, every 2 weeks we have like another mobilization to give some more help to people on national level, also on the European level, because it just lasts. It's a long thing. It's not like we thought 2 weeks and it's over. No, and it's gonna shift our world very deeply. So it's gonna be maybe not like a fight for many years, but definitely a fight for a couple of months to get with this idea as high as possible and convince as many decision makers as possible.
Yeah, we're reaching the end of our conversation, and I would like to invite you to somehow harvest the main ideas of our conversation. So my question is, what are the most important points in your view? What should the audience, or what can the audience take or do?
Universal basic income for the times of crisis is something that will provide us all with some sense of security and also will unite us across Europe. This is something we need to do. We need to have as soon as possible and for as long as possible. And you can be part of it if you join the campaign, if you join the petition with WeMove.EU and Universal Basic Income Europe.
Yeah, dear Marta, thank you very much for taking the time. And you guys out there, thank you very much too for watching and listening. And well, let's turn this crisis into an opportunity for a better world. And we look really forward to having you with us again next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.